Okay, so this season's FA Cup second round was kicked off by Harrogate Town versus Gainsborough Trinity. Now, Harrogate Town are in League Two, of course, they're a Football League club, but Gainsborough Trinity are in the Northern Premier, which is the seventh tier. That's a couple of levels below the National League. 7, 8 seasons ago, these two clubs were in the same non-league division. So Harrogate Town, bit of a success story in the sense of getting out the non-league and stabilising in the Football League and going up the divisions and up the levels. Gainsborough Trinity, I've got to do a video on them. They were a Football League side before the First World War. Very interesting history, which we will look at in due course. The game itself, Gainsborough Trinity haven't played for a couple of weeks. A lot of postponements, plus they have had 7 matches in this season's FA Cup. So there are fixture rearrangements, and they are a part-time club in the sense of the playing group. This is a proper non-league side of old. The playing group, they'll have day jobs. They train twice a week, and then they play on the weekends. But from now until March, maybe even early April, they're playing a minimum of 2 games a week to catch up with the fixture congestion. So when you hear managers in the Premier League complaining of fixture congestion, it happens in the non-league as well. It's just those voices don't get heard because they're not big clubs, apparently. So there's that. Now, the match itself, the first half, Harrogate Town dominated the play. They created a lot of opportunities. I felt the weather, I think, impacted this game because it wasn't the best FA Cup tie I've seen. I wasn't saying it was terrible. I think it was refereed very, very well. There was a little flashpoint beginning the second half, which we'll discuss. I felt it was refereed very well. There were some firm challenges going in. There weren't a lot of bookings. It was a very physical game, which you tend to get with a lower league Football League club playing a non-league club in the early rounds of the FA Cup. There were a few strong challenges, but I think it was played in the right way. There was no deliberate intent by anyone to deliberately hurt a player or anything like that. I think it was played in the right way. I think the weather, it rained throughout, and we've had a lot of rain. We've had a lot of snow as well up in Yorkshire. So the weather hasn't been great the last few weeks, which I think would have made the pitch heavy. It didn't cut up too much, but you could definitely see it was a heavy pitch. But for a League Two club the size of Harrogate, I think their playing surface held up reasonably well considering the amount of rain and snow that we've had. But that first half, it looked like Harrogate were trying too hard to score rather than relaxing into the game and just going through the phases and going through, past. They were causing Gainsborough all sorts of problems. But I think they were rushing that final parcel, that final opportunity, and they had a lot. They created a lot. So Harrogate were definitely more match ready. I think with Gainsborough not playing for a few weeks, I think that definitely impacted their first half performance. And they did start to look a little bit tired, very, very defensive, defending very deep, couldn't keep hold of the ball, and they were just absorbing waves of pressure from Harrogate Town. But Harrogate Town, I think, were rushing that final parcel, that final opportunity on goal. They did force the goalkeeper into a couple of saves, and they had a few opportunities. There was nearly an own goal in there as well. There was some last-ditch blocks and challenges, and it just felt like it was going to come the goal, but it didn't, and it was 0-0 at half time. And I felt that this was going to be a 1-0, and it ended up being a 1-0. Now, before Dean Cornelius scores his goal, which is a very well worked goal, he doesn't even have to move to head the ball. He just goes into the box. It's completely unmarked. The cross is pinpoint. The build-up play is really, really good. I think that was the best bit of play from Harrogate. They finally got that final pass and that opportunity right. They didn't rush the opportunity, which they've been doing in the first half. But shortly before the goal on 57 minutes, Cooley, in clearing a corner from one side of the pitch, it's bounced around the box a little bit. There's a contested ball in the box. It bounces towards the other touchline where the away fans are, and he's chasing the ball. Now there is a collision with the Gainsborough captain, and he goes head first into some where the paramedics keep their stretchers, and it's a nasty head injury. Now that did have a little bit of a flare up, and you could see that the Harrogate players were not happy with the challenge. I think it's a foul. I think if it's on a dry surface, he doesn't slide into the stretchers and the advertising hoardings and the other pitch side equipment. Because it's a wet pitch, your momentum, it's going to be almost, there's no friction. You're just aquaplaning, and it was a heavy collision. Lengthy spell of treatment, which added 8 minutes onto the game. I think the referee dealt with it very, very well. And it was a little bit, it could have really boiled over then. The game had been played in the right manner. There was no deliberate nasty challenges. There were some firm challenges, but I think it had been played in the right manner up to that point. That was the only, I would say, nasty incident. I think it was accidental. I think, yes, it is a foul, and it's just his momentum. Cooley's momentum takes him into the stretcher and the advertising hoarding area where he when he was taken off the pitch, you could see he was clearly in shock and he was clearly concussed. And he had a very nasty head injury. A fair bit of claret has flowed out of his cranium. And obviously, with any kind of head injury, you would expect he would probably have to go to hospital. The thing was, what was ironic is where the stretchers were stored at the side of the pitch is where all the paramedics and doctors were. So he was seen to straight away, which was good to see. That did disrupt the flow of the game. It's a cold, wet night. It was raining quite heavily throughout. And you could see that disrupted the flow of the game. And then, obviously, the goal comes. On another night, Harrogate may have scored 4 or 5 if they weren't so wasteful. But then Gainsborough, to their credit, didn't give up. They're still in the game. It's only 1-0, which is a dangerous scoreline to have. And, of course, we have no replays anymore, so it would have gone to extra time and penalties had Gainsborough got the equaliser and such. But because they were so defensive in the first half and couldn't get on the ball, I think they did take some energy out of the legs. And Harrogate being 3 divisions higher, and being a bit more match fit and fully professional, you could definitely see that difference in fitness and skill level. It was very, very noticeable. And Gainsborough, they haven't played for a couple of weeks. If Gainsborough had been playing regularly and hadn't had matches postponed because of the weather and their FA Cup run, I think this could have been a different result, with Harrogate being so wasteful. But in the end, I think, the result, I think, is a fair reflection of the game. On another night, Harrogate probably have, as I say, 4 or 5. I think the weather did contribute to potentially making it, I wouldn't say a scrappy game, but not as high energy as some early round FA Cup ties I've seen over the years. I've seen more energetic FA Cup ties. But I think Harrogate, 2/3 of the pitch, brilliant. That final third, while they were creating problems, I think they were a little bit wasteful and a little bit rushed. Gainsborough, to their credit, considering they've already played 7 matches in this year's competition and they haven't played for a couple of weeks, the fact they only lost 1-0, I think, is a fair result. I think they gave it everything. But you could definitely see that lack of match fitness and match practice, I think, cost them a little bit. They were a little bit sloppy when they did the ball. They didn't keep hold of it for long enough, and towards the end of the second half, they did have a few opportunities. But when you've been doing that much defending and running around off the ball and defending off the ball, it can become quite tiring when you're defending constantly being pulled around. So you could definitely see they were tired, but they gave it a fair crack. But Harrogate Town deserved winners 1-0. So there's a decent start to the weekend's FA Cup action. Hopefully it gets a bit better, played at a bit of a higher tempo, and we see some fun results and a lot of goals go in and a lot of fun games to watch. But fair play to Harrogate Town, they're through to the 3rd round. And as I say, 7-8 years ago, these two sides were in the same division in the non-league, and Harrogate is one of those former non-league sides that have established themselves in the Football League and have really developed over recent seasons and are now very stable in the Football League. It was also nice to see a sellout crowd and a good atmosphere as well. Gainsborough took a lot of fans with them. One of the highest crowds Harrogate's had in a very, very long time. I think it was actually a sellout, which is good, and we've seen criticisms of the FA Cup as well, with a lot of empty seats on some of these weeknight games, because it is a Friday night game and it was a late kick-off. I mean, what's the time now? It's 5 to 10 in the evening now as I'm recording the video. You know, while Gainsborough isn't a million miles away from Harrogate, Lincolnshire, from Yorkshire, that's still a decent trek. It's still a decent journey, and with bad weather and it being a Friday night, those away fans obviously going home disappointed. But that's an issue that we can see with some of these cup games, especially in the 5th round, where they're going to be playing them on a midweek. That's where we start to see the empty seats. But it was good to see a really good crowd tonight, which is positive, bodes well and positive. But there we go. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. Place your thoughts on the game in the comments section below. I'd like to hear from anyone who was actually at the game. It's always very interesting when you get feedback from fans from who actually were in the stadium. But for me, for now, that's all I have. I'll have some more content for you later on this weekend.